If you clicked on this video, there is something you have been feeling for a while now, something you may have never quite put into words. This sense that most of the people around you are running on autopilot, responding without really being present. Living without really being awake, repeating the same patterns, the same reactions, the same choices, as if there is a script running underneath everything they do, and they simply don't see it. But you see it, you notice it, and it bothers you in a way that is hard to explain to someone who isn't seeing the same thing. Researchers at Harvard spent years measuring exactly this. What they found was that the human mind spends approximately 47% of its waking hours completely disconnected from what is actually happening in the present moment. Almost half of a person's conscious life, thinking about something else, somewhere else, some other moment that isn't now. And what those researchers also found is that this autopilot state is directly linked to lower levels of well-being, clarity, and satisfaction with life. Almost half the time, awake but absent. But here is what the research doesn't say, and what this video will. Because 47% is the average, it is what happens with most people, and most people isn't everyone. There is a real, measurable, neurologically documented difference between consciousness that operates in reactive mode and consciousness that operates in an awakened state. And that difference isn't genetic. It isn't luck. It isn't reserved for enlightened people in monasteries in Tibet. It is a shift that happens when consciousness begins to observe itself, when it stops being only the character and starts being the observer of the character as well. You didn't click on this video by accident. You clicked because some part of you was already moving in this direction, already stepping outside the script and starting to ask who is writing it. And that is not a small thing. That is exactly the movement that separates the 1% from everyone else. Let me describe some things you have probably already lived, because I know you are going to recognize them. You have been in the middle of a conversation and noticed that the other person wasn't really listening. They were just waiting for their turn to speak, already formulating their response while you were still mid-sentence. And while you were noticing that, you also noticed that you probably do the same thing all the time without realizing it. That double awareness, seeing the pattern in others and recognizing it in yourself, that is already an awakened consciousness operating. Most people don't have that second layer of observation. You have probably had that strange moment of driving somewhere, arriving and realizing you have absolutely no memory of the journey. Your body did everything on its own, while your mind was somewhere else entirely. 20 minutes of life that simply don't exist in your conscious memory. That is autopilot in its visible form, but the less visible version of it runs constantly in decisions, in emotional reactions, in choices that feel like yours, but are actually patterns running beneath the level of conscious awareness. And you have probably felt, at some point, that sudden clarity where everything seemed sharper in a different way, where you were completely present, completely there. And there was a different quality to everything. In colors, in sounds, in the feeling of being alive. And then it passed, and you returned to normal mode, and the distance between that state and normal one started to feel bigger and bigger. This isn't vague spirituality, this is documented neuroscience. The brain, in a state of full presence, activates completely different neural networks than the ones that operate on autopilot. And the difference between those two modes isn't gradual, it is qualitative. It is the difference between seeing life through a fogged-up window and seeing it with the glass clean. What brought you here is that you have already tasted both states. You know the difference, and something in you is refusing to accept the fogged window as the default. Before we get into the science behind all of this, I want to give you something to do right now, not after the video. Now, while you are watching, I want you to feel all of this happening in real time, because what I am about to ask will demonstrate in real time exactly what we are discussing, and the demonstration will make the scientific explanation land in a way that words alone cannot. Stop everything you are doing right now completely. If you cannot do it right now, you can come back to this video later with more time. But it is important that you give yourself fully to this moment. Take a deep breath. Now, pay attention to the sounds around you. Don't identify them, don't analyze them, don't categorize them. Just listen as if it is the first time you have ever heard anything at all, for a few seconds, just that. Now pay attention to your breathing. Don't change it. Just observe. The air coming in, the air going out, the temperature of the air as it enters, slightly different as it leaves. Now, pay attention to your hands. Look at them. Where are they right now? Feel their weight, their temperature, the sensation of what they are touching. Now tell me, how long did you stay in that state before a thought appeared and pulled you somewhere else? Before you started thinking about what you are doing later, what happened earlier. Anything that wasn't this present moment. The here and now, if you lasted less than 30 seconds, that is normal. That is what the research finds in most people. A mind trained by years of autopilot resists the present as if the present were dangerous. But here is what just happened. For those seconds when you were completely present, you were in the state that neuroscience calls active mode consciousness. The state in which the 1% operate far more frequently than most people. And now that you have felt the difference, the scientific explanation is going to make sense in a completely different way. What you just felt has a name in neuroscience. The autopilot state that the mind returns to automatically has a name, the default mode network. It was extensively documented by neuroscientist Marcus Raichle at Washington University in the early 2000s. And what he discovered changed how neuroscience understands the functioning of human consciousness. The default mode network is the set of brain regions that activates when you are not doing anything specific. When you are daydreaming, planning the future, revisiting the past, thinking about yourself and about others. It is the self-network, the narrative you tell about who you are, what happened to you, what might happen next. And it is voracious. It consumes more energy than any other brain activity, and it runs in the background constantly, like a program that never fully closes. What Raichle and other researchers also documented is that excessive activation of this network is associated with rumination, anxiety, depression, and that feeling of being present in your body but absent from your life, awake but not belonging to the present moment. Now, let's get to the quantum part of this. And this is where the conversation goes deeper. Physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff developed together a theory called ORC, Orchestrated Objective Reduction, which proposes that human consciousness emerges from quantum processes occurring inside structures called microtubules within neurons. The theory is still controversial, still being debated, but what it points to is significant. That consciousness isn't just the product of electrical activity between neurons, but that there is a quantum level of processing that most people never access, because the default mode network creates too much noise for it to happen. Autopilot isn't just a bad mental habit. It is a state that literally blocks deeper layers of information processing that human consciousness is capable of accessing. The 1% don't have more intelligence, they have less noise. Now, I want to share a comment from one of our videos because I will be bringing one of your comments into every video going forward. Because they describe exactly the kind of experience many people go through when a transition begins. In this case, the person was talking about the moment when their old emotional structure started to fall apart. That is when the internal system becomes more sensitive, more perceptive, as if small signals suddenly amplify. That mix of awakening and emotional exhaustion isn't punishment. It is the first sign of reorganization, the collapse of the pattern that can no longer hold the next version of who you are becoming. That is why those things happened, the breakup, waking up at 3:33 a.m., all of it. Those are signs of a quantum transition, preparing the ground for a quantum leap. Hold on, this phase will pass. If you are watching this and you have noticed similar signs, share them in the comments. Thank you for sharing your experience. And this is where the conversation shifts completely. Because everything I just described, the autopilot, the default mode network, the noise that blocks deeper layers of consciousness, it raises a question that most videos about consciousness never actually answer. If the autopilot state is the brain's default, if it is the default configuration that consumes the most energy and that the brain returns to automatically, why do most people stay stuck in it even when they know something different exists? Even when they have already tasted the state of full presence and know the difference? It is not a lack of information. It is not a lack of motivation. And it is definitely not a lack of desire to change. It is something more specific than that. Something that, when you understand it, completely changes how you relate to your own awakening process. And understanding this is the difference between trying to break out of autopilot through willpower, which works for a few days and then stops, and making a change that your neurological system actually integrates for real. What comes next is exactly that, and it is simpler than it sounds. The human brain has a property that neuroscience calls neuroplasticity, the ability to physically reorganize itself in response to repeated experiences. Every time you have a thought, a neural connection activates. Every time you think the same thought again, that connection gets stronger, and connections that aren't used weaken and eventually disappear. Autopilot is strong because it has been practiced for years, not because it is true, not because it is useful, because it is familiar. You have always done it naturally, without even realizing what was happening. The brain generally prefers the familiar over the optimal. Always, it prefers the comfort zone. It is more energy efficient to reuse an existing neural pathway than to build a new one. So the question isn't how to motivate someone to break out of autopilot. The question is how to create the conditions for new neural pathways to be built frequently enough to become the new default. And this is where quantum physics enters in a way that goes beyond conventional neuroscience. Quantum coherence, the ability of biological systems to maintain organized rather than chaotic quantum states, is higher in systems with less internal electromagnetic noise. The state of presence you touched in the exercise earlier isn't just a subjective feeling of calm. It is a state where the level of internal coherence of the nervous system objectively changes, where the noise drops enough for deeper layers of processing to become accessible. And what the data shows in both neuroscience and biophysics is that every time you voluntarily return to that state, even for seconds, you are literally building the neural pathway that makes the return easier next time, not metaphorically, physically. The structure of the brain gradually changes, turning what is right into something natural and familiar. The 1% didn't wake up all at once. They woke up in accumulations, in repeated returns to the state of presence, until that state became more familiar than the autopilot. You don't need to stay in the presence all the time. You need to return to it frequently enough for the system to learn that this is the preferred path. And that return begins with recognizing when you have left it, with understanding what happens when you notice that most of the people around you are on autopilot and feel that discomfort. That discomfort is awakened consciousness, recognizing the contrast. It is not judgment, it is calibration. The MBSR program, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, was developed by Jon Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts and has over 40 years of documented research behind it. And what the data from that program shows repeatedly across thousands of participants over decades is a pattern I want you to imagine now, because you probably know someone like this, or maybe you have lived something similar yourself. Imagine someone who arrives at a program like this without any great expectations, successful by any external measure, good career, stable relationships, organized life, and completely asleep on the inside, describing their own life as a series of tasks executed with efficiency, with no real sense of being present in any of them. Wake up, function, sleep, wake up again. With a part of them that knew this wasn't everything, but without knowing what to do with that knowing. Imagine that in the third week of the program, during a simple breathing awareness exercise, something shifts, not dramatically, no vision, no light, just a perception that arrived with clarity, that there was a difference between them and their thoughts. That thoughts came, passed through, and there was something there observing them. Something that wasn't in a hurry, had no agenda, wasn't anxious. Something that simply was. That is what participants in the program describe repeatedly in the research. This feeling of finding a room in their own house they never knew existed. That was always there. That was always available, but that they had never been still enough to walk into. And what the follow-up data shows in the months that follow is consistent. The external life doesn't change dramatically at first. The job is the same, the relationships are the same, but the quality of presence with which people inhabit each thing changes completely. Conversations carry more weight, decisions have more clarity. And that feeling of going through your own life without really being in it gets replaced by something participants describe as feeling like they are living. Instead of managing, they didn't become part of the 1% because they read about consciousness. They did because they found the room that was always there and decided to inhabit it more often. That room exists in you too. You touched it in the exercise earlier, and the question isn't whether you can access it. It is how often you choose to return. If you are feeling like this is exactly the kind of content you needed to find, where science and awakening meet for real, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs it. Every video here is a reflection, and reflections arrive in the order your consciousness needs them, not the order you plan. You are destined to have this quantum leap. Now, I need to tell you that something is happening here that goes beyond what any statistic or experiment can fully capture. And I want to name it because it is relevant to where you are in this moment. The fact that you are here, listening to this, feeling what you are feeling as you listen, that is not coincidence, and it is not the algorithm. It is coherence. It is consciousness that is already moving toward the state of presence, being drawn toward information that resonates with that movement. The field doesn't deliver the same content to everyone. It delivers what corresponds to the receptivity state of each consciousness in that moment. And your receptivity state right now is saying something important. You are more awake than you believe you are. The perception that most people are asleep, the perception that brought you here, that is already your observer operating. The disconnection from autopilot that you already feel, That is your nervous system already reorganizing itself. You are not starting from zero. You are recognizing something that was already in process. What changes when you understand this is that you stop treating awakening as an achievement you haven't reached yet, and start treating it as a process that has already begun and that you are deepening. That shift in perspective isn't small. It completely changes the relationship you have with your own journey, because consciousness that sees itself as asleep and struggling to wake up carries an energy of effort, of inadequacy, of distance between where it is and where it should be. Consciousness that recognizes itself as already in the process of awakening carries a different energy of deepening, of trust in what is already moving, of presence with the process instead of resistance to it. And something in you already knew this before you arrived at this video. The reflection confirms what the field was already showing. I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually stop before you answer. Don't respond with what sounds right. Respond with what is true. What is the moment of the day when you are most on autopilot? Not the moment you think it should be, not the most obvious one. The real, specific moment where you notice you are functioning mechanically without actually being present. Maybe it is in the morning, in the first 30 minutes after waking up. Maybe it is in certain conversations with certain people. Maybe it is in a specific type of task you do repeatedly. Maybe it is at a specific time of day when your energy drops and the default mode takes over completely. Leave it in the comments, because naming precisely where autopilot operates in you is the first real step of change. The system cannot reorganize itself around something vague. It needs a specific point of observation. And something else is happening when you do that. When you name your experience in a space where others are naming the same thing, you are contributing to something that Rupert Sheldrake called the morphogenetic field. The idea that when consciousnesses go through the same process of recognition, they strengthen the field of information that makes that process more accessible for those who come after. Your naming isn't just for you. It is part of a larger field that is becoming more coherent. If you made it to this point in the video, it is because something here resonated, because it added something real to where you are right now. And thinking about that, and about the deeper knowledge that people like you, people who are genuinely seeking an awakening, deserve to have access to. I created a practical guide specifically for this point in the journey. For when the awakening has already begun, but the practical map of how to deepen it isn't clear yet. It is not a meditation technique guide, it is a consciousness navigation guide. How to recognize the moments of autopilot with more precision. How to create the return points to the state of presence that build the new neural pathway. How to work with what is already moving in you instead of fighting against what is still asleep. This guide is in the description and in the pinned comment. It is not just extra content. It is the next reflection in practical form. Your definitive quantum leap. If you feel like it is time, that recognition is already the field guiding you. Trust that and click the link. You are not the same consciousness that started this video. Not because I taught you something, but because you observed yourself. You did the exercise, you felt the difference. You recognized the process that was already in motion in you before you arrived here. That is the reflection operating. Not a video giving you information, a mirror showing you what was already there. The video appearing on your screen right now is the next reflection of this frequency. Every video on this channel is built as part of a continuous investigation, a different mirror, a different angle, the same consciousness recognizing itself at ever deeper levels. Click the video on the screen and continue this journey. I will see you in the next reflection.